It was a Tuesday when the aliens showed up. Not a particularly special Tuesday, just your average, run-of-the-mill Tuesday, where people complained about it not being Friday yet. Jack Reynolds was in the middle of reviewing a 347-page merger agreement, hunting for loopholes like a caffeine-addicted bloodhound, when every screen in his downtown Manhattan office simultaneously switched to an emergency broadcast. "This is not a test," announced a visibly shaken news anchor. "Repeat, this is not a test. Enormous spacecraft have appeared in orbit around Earth. Multiple craft are now hovering above major cities worldwide. We're receiving reports from New York, London, Beijing, Moscow, and..." The feed cut to static before returning with the anchor looking even more disheveled. "We're now going live to the UN General Assembly where the visitors have requested to address world leaders." Jack snorted and reached for his coffee. "Requested, my ass." More like demanded. He glanced at his watch. 3 hours until his deadline on the merger paperwork. Alien invasion or not, the partners would still expect it on time. The broadcast switched to the UN, where a creature that looked like the unholy offspring of a praying mantis and a filing cabinet stood at the podium. It was nearly 8 feet tall with a metallic exoskeleton and multiple limbs that moved with unsettling precision. Behind it stood 4 similar beings, each carrying what were unmistakably weapons, despite looking like office supplies that had achieved sentience and a bad attitude. "Greetings. Primitives," the alien's voice crackled through a translator device. "I am Administrator Zylock of the Galactic Resource Acquisition Bureau. Your planet has been catalogued, assessed, and selected for immediate resource extraction under Galactic Code 7B, subsection 42, paragraph Omega." Jack leaned forward, suddenly interested despite himself. Did this bug just cite legal code? "Your planet contains critical materials needed by the Galactic Confederation," Zylock continued. "We require your oceans, forests, mineral deposits, and approximately 30% of your atmosphere. Resistance is futile, and also in violation of Code 9C regarding insurgency against superior civilizations." The UN General Assembly erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted, some fled, and at least one representative fainted dramatically into the arms of a security guard who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "We will begin extraction in exactly 72 of your Earth hours," Zylock announced with the same tone one might use to discuss weekend weather. "Any interference will result in penalties described in Appendix J17 of the Resource Acquisition Treaty, which primarily involve molecular destabilization of your governing bodies, both the governmental kind and the physical kind." The alien made a sound that might have been a laugh. That was humor. Nobody laughed. Jack set down his coffee mug so hard it cracked. Did this oversized cockroach just try to make a pun before stealing our planet? His phone rang. Jack glanced at the caller ID. It was his college roommate, Miguel Ortiz, now a senior advisor to the president. "Jack, are you watching this?" Miguel's voice was tight with panic. "Kind of hard to miss, Miguel. Looks like the end of the world is interrupting my billable hours. We need you." Jack laughed. "You need the military, not a corporate lawyer." They cited legal code, Jack. They're operating on some kind of galactic legal framework. The president is assembling a team right now. The aliens have agreed to provide us with a copy of their resource acquisition treaty. We need someone who can find loopholes in their legalese. "You want me to find a loophole to save the planet?" Jack's voice dripped with sarcasm. "What's next? Filing an injunction against the apocalypse?" "This is serious," Jack Miguel snapped. "The president specifically asked for you. Remember that pharmaceutical merger you killed last year by finding that single comma in paragraph 537? It was paragraph 538, and it was a semicolon, not a comma." "Exactly. That's the kind of pedantic attention to detail we need right now. A military helicopter will be at your office in 20 minutes. Jack looked down at his merger agreement, then back up at the screen where world leaders were still in panic mode, while Zylock stood impassively waiting for the humans to finish their emotional outbursts. "Fine," Jack sighed. "But I'm billing my regular hours. End of the world doesn't mean pro bono. Just get to Andrews Air Force Base. And Jack, bring your reading glasses. This document they're sending over is apparently several thousand pages long." Jack hung up and stared at the alien on screen. Well, he muttered to himself, at least it'll be more interesting than reviewing merger agreements for tech bros who think they're changing the world by creating another food delivery app. As promised, 20 minutes later, Jack found himself in a military helicopter heading toward Washington, D.C., clutching his laptop bag and wondering if his malpractice insurance covered failure to prevent planetary theft. Below him, the streets of New York were gridlocked with people trying to flee despite having nowhere to go. Above the city, a massive ship shaped like an elegant geometric paperweight hovered silently. As they flew south, Jack spotted 2 more ships in the distance. 3 days, he muttered, looking at his watch. 3 days to find a legal loophole in an alien contract before Earth becomes an intergalactic strip mine. Just another Tuesday at Reynolds Legal Associates. Jack arrived at Andrews Air Force Base to find it in organized chaos. Military personnel rushed in every direction, politicians arrived in motorcades, and harried aides scurried about clutching tablets and looking important. A stern-faced woman in an immaculate suit approached as Jack stepped off the helicopter. "Mr. Reynolds? I'm Agent Carraway, Secret Service. Follow me. They're waiting for you," Jack asked, jogging to keep up with her brisk pace. "Who exactly is they?" "The response team. And the president." Jack nearly tripped. "The president? Look, I'm good at what I do, but I usually need at least a day to prepare before meeting the leader of the free world." "Well, today you get 7 minutes. That's how long the walk to the Situation Room takes." 6 minutes and 43 seconds later, Jack was ushered into a room that looked like every movie depiction of a crisis center, large screens displaying maps and data, grim-faced military officers, stressed politicians, and the distinct aroma of cold coffee and impending doom. President Eleanor Harrison sat at the head of the table. She looked up when Jack entered, her expression a study in controlled panic. "Mr. Reynolds, thank you for coming. I understand you're one of the best contract lawyers in the country." Jack straightened his slightly rumpled suit. "I'm certainly the most expensive, Madam President." Someone snorted from across the table. Jack turned to see a woman with dark hair pulled into a severe bun, wearing what appeared to be the world's most aggressive power suit. "Something funny?" Jack asked. "Just wondering if your rates include a Saving the World discount," she replied, her voice carrying a hint of a Spanish accent. The president gestured to the woman. "This is Eliza Morales, former lead counsel for the International Trade Commission, and our foremost expert on international treaties." Eliza gave Jack a curt nod that somehow managed to simultaneously convey professional acknowledgement and personal doubt about his abilities. "And this," the president continued, gesturing to a man hunched over a tablet, "is Dev Patel, professor of international law at Oxford and consultant to the UN Security Council." Dev looked up briefly, offered a distracted hello, and returned to furiously taking notes on his tablet. "We've just received this," the president said, tapping a button that brought up a holographic display in the center of the table. A document appeared, written in alien script that shifted and rearranged itself into English before their eyes. "The Galactic Resource Acquisition Treaty. All 6,427 pages of it." Jack let out a low whistle. "And they expect us to review this in 72 hours. "Actually, we're down to 69 hours and 22 minutes, came a voice from the corner of the room. A young man with wild hair and thick glasses sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by paper printouts of the treaty. He hadn't bothered to look up. "That's Theo Goldman," Eliza explained. "Former child prodigy, 3PH.DS, and the strangest paralegal you'll ever meet. But he reads faster than anyone I've ever seen and remembers everything." "Everything?" Jack asked skeptically. "Ask me to recite any page of any legal document I've read in the last 15 years, Theo said, still not looking up. "Maybe later," Jack said. "So this is the dream team? 3 lawyers and a human computer." "The best minds we could assemble on short notice," the president confirmed. "The military is developing contingency plans, but I think we all know how that would end." On the screens around the room, news footage showed the alien ships hovering ominously over cities worldwide. Their size and technology made Earth's military capabilities look like children's toys. "So our options are what? Find a loophole or die?" Jack asked. "I appreciate your ability to summarize complex situations," Mr. Reynolds, the president, replied dryly. A general stepped forward. "Madam President, we've just received word. The aliens are sending a representative to meet with our team. They say it's standard procedure to address any minor clarifications before resource extraction begins." The president looked at Jack and the others. "You have 1 hour to prepare. Find me something, anything we can use." As the president left with her military advisors, Jack turned to his new colleagues. "All right, we've got 1 hour to find a winning strategy in a 6,000-page document written by aliens. Thoughts?" Eliza pulled up a chair. "We divide and conquer. I'll take the sections on resource classification and planetary rights. I'll focus on jurisdiction and enforcement mechanisms," Dev said, finally looking up from his tablet. "I'll read all of it," Theo announced, grabbing another stack of papers. "All of it." "In an hour," Jack scoffed. Theo pushed his glasses up. "I've already read the first 1,200 pages. It's mostly bureaucratic padding, but there are some interesting contradictions in the appendices." Jack stared at him. "Okay then. I'll look for definitional inconsistencies and contractual loopholes. That's where they usually hide the good stuff." They worked in concentrated silence for 45 minutes, occasionally muttering to themselves or asking the others to cross-reference a section. Jack found himself impressed despite his initial skepticism. Eliza marked up pages with surgical precision. Dev built what appeared to be a 3-dimensional map of the treaty's legal framework on his tablet, and Theo was a blur of motion, flipping pages faster than seemed humanly possible. "Found something," Eliza said suddenly. "Section 394, paragraph C. The treaty defines uninhabited resources as fair game for extraction. We're clearly inhabited." "Check section 1042, Theo called out without looking up. "It redefines uninhabited as any planetary body with less than Class 3 technological development. We're only Class 2 according to their metrics." "Damn," Eliza muttered. "Wait," Jack said, flipping through his section. "What about the consent clauses? There has to be something about requiring consent from the primitive species they're plundering." "Section 3991, Theo supplied immediately. Consent is automatically granted upon notification of extraction intent." Dev groaned. "So just by telling us they're taking our resources, we've technically agreed to it. These aliens would make excellent corporate lawyers," Jack muttered. "No offense," he added, glancing at Eliza. "None taken. I left corporate law because the ethics were too questionable," she replied with a thin smile. Their discussion was interrupted when the door opened. Agent Carraway stepped in. "They're here." The aliens, Dev asked nervously. "Yes. Their representative is in the East Wing conference room. The president requests your immediate presence." As they gathered their notes, Jack felt a knot in his stomach. Anyone have a brilliant insight they'd like to share before we meet the space locust? "Just one," Theo said, finally looking up from his papers, his eyes wide with excitement. "Appendix R7, subsection theta." "And that is," Jack prompted, "the dispute resolution clause. It might be our only chance." Before Theo could elaborate, they were ushered out and led through a series of corridors. Jack found himself walking beside Eliza. "So," she said quietly, "do you really think we can out-lawyer an advanced alien civilization?" Jack gave her his best courtroom smile. "Eliza, if there's one thing humans excel at beyond all other possible species in the universe, it's finding ways to screw each other over through legal technicalities. We've been perfecting it for millennia. These aliens might have faster than light travel. But I'd bet they've never dealt with someone who's survived New York corporate litigation." They reached the conference room doors. 2 heavily armed soldiers stood at attention. Besides, Jack added as the doors swung open, "What's the worst that could happen? If we fail, at least we won't have to worry about student loan payments anymore." They stepped into the room to find the president, several cabinet members, and a military general already seated at one end of a long table. At the other end sat Administrator Zylock, flanked by 2 alien guards. Up close, the alien was even more intimidating, its exoskeleton gleaming under the fluorescent lights, its multiple eyes swiveling independently to track everyone in the room. Zylock's mechanical voice translated. "The legal specialists. How quaint. Your species still relies on verbal contracts and written agreements. We outgrew such inefficient methods eons ago." Jack smiled tightly. Yet here you are with a 6,000-page treaty. Seems like some traditions span the cosmos. Psylocke's mandibles clicked in what might have been annoyance. Let us not waste time. Your planet has been selected. The treaty has been provided. Are there any minor clarifications your primitive minds require before we begin the extraction process? Jack glanced at his team, then back at the alien. Actually, yes. We'd like to discuss Appendix R7, subsection Theta, the dispute resolution clause. For the first time since their arrival, the alien's constant motion stilled completely. Its multiple eyes focused solely on Jack. You've read that far? Psylocke asked, a new note in its mechanical voice that sounded remarkably like surprise. We're primitive. Not illiterate, Jack replied. And we'd like to formally register a dispute under the terms outlined therein. The room fell silent. The alien's guards shifted uncomfortably. Psylocke's mandibles clicked rapidly in what Jack assumed was their version of anxious fidgeting. This is unprecedented, Psylocke finally said. No species at your development level has ever invoked the dispute resolution protocol. Jack leaned forward, feeling the familiar rush he got when he knew he'd found a weakness in an opponent's case. Well, we're full of surprises. Now, shall we discuss the appointment of a neutral arbitrator, as specified in paragraph 14 of the subsection, or would you prefer to escalate this directly to the Galactic Judiciary Commission? Psylocke stood abruptly, towering over the humans. This meeting is adjourned. I must consult with my superiors. The alien stormed out, its guards scrambling to keep up. When the door closed, everyone turned to stare at Jack and his team. What just happened? The president asked. Jack turned to Theo. That's what I'd like to know. What exactly is in this dispute resolution clause that has our friends so rattled? Theo grinned, pushing his glasses up his nose. Let's just say, they never expected a primitive species to get that far in the document, and they certainly never expected us to understand the implications. Which are, Jack prompted. Which are, Theo said, his grin widening, that we just bought ourselves time. And in legal battles, time is everything. Jack nodded slowly, beginning to smile himself. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we've just found our loophole. Now we just need to figure out how to exploit it before they recover from their surprise. The president leaned back in her chair, looking slightly less doomed than before. How much time do you need? As much as possible, Jack replied. Because I think we're about to attempt the biggest legal heist in human history. We're going to steal our planet back through paperwork. After Psylocke's abrupt departure, the team was moved to a secure conference room deep within the White House. The walls were lined with screens displaying alien ship movements, global panic metrics, and a particularly depressing countdown clock showing 65 hours until extraction was scheduled to begin. Jack loosened his tie and surveyed the chaotic spread of treaty pages covering every available surface. All right, Theo. You clearly saw something in that dispute resolution clause that spooked our exoskeletal friend. Time to share with the class. Theo was sitting cross-legged on the table itself, surrounded by specific pages he'd pulled from various sections of the treaty. It's not just the dispute resolution clause, he explained, pushing his glasses up. It's how it connects to 3 other sections that they clearly never expected anyone to cross-reference. He grabbed a marker and began drawing on the conference room's glass wall, creating a complex diagram linking various treaty sections. The Galactic Confederation operates on a strict hierarchical legal system. Their Resource Acquisition Bureau is just one division of their government, and they have specific procedural requirements. Like any good bureaucracy, Eliza nodded, studying Theo's diagram. Exactly, Theo continued. By invoking the Dispute Resolution Protocol, we've activated a mandatory review process. According to Appendix R7, they can't begin extraction until the dispute is resolved. Dev leaned forward, excitement building. So we've bought ourselves time beyond the 72-hour deadline. Potentially much more, Theo confirmed. The dispute resolution process requires appointment of a neutral arbitrator from the Galactic Judiciary Commission, which according to Section 5938 can take anywhere from 20 to 45 standard cycles. And how long is a standard cycle in Earth time? Jack asked. Theo grinned. That's where it gets interesting. According to the conversion table in Appendix D, approximately 2.3 Earth days. Jack did the quick math. So we've potentially brought ourselves up to 103 Earth days. Assuming they follow their own protocols. Yes, Theo nodded. The president, who had been silently observing from the doorway, stepped into the room. That's something at least. It gives us time to prepare evacuation plans or defensive measures. With all due respect, Madam President, Jack said, I don't think we're just buying time here. I think we might have a shot at beating them at their own game. He turned to Theo. What else did you find? Theo's eyes lit up as he flipped through more pages. The real gem is buried in section 7212, which defines qualifying civilizations for resource extraction. There's a subsection about planets with intelligent indigenous species that references an entirely different treaty, the Galactic Sentient Rights Accord. And they included this other treaty in the documents they gave us, Eliza asked skeptically. No, but they referenced it, Theo explained. And here's the beautiful part, section 12 of our treaty specifically states that all referenced external documents are considered incorporated by reference, and therefore binding on all parties. Jack's eyebrows shot up. So we can demand to see this Sentient Rights Accord. Not only can we demand it, they're legally required to provide it under their own rules, Theo confirmed. This is starting to sound promising, the president said cautiously. But what exactly are you hoping to find in this other treaty? Dev, who had been quietly inputting data into his tablet, looked up. If it's anything like Earth's international law frameworks, rights accords typically include protections for indigenous populations against exploitation. They might have provisions about consent, compensation, or environmental preservation. Jack walked to the window, staring out at the alien ship hovering over the Washington Monument. They're too confident, too bureaucratic. And bureaucracies love their procedures and cross-references. I bet this Sentient Rights Accord is full of provisions they're completely ignoring because they never expected a primitive species to call them on it. There's more, Theo said, his voice dropping almost to a whisper, as if sharing a secret. The Dispute Resolution Clause includes a provision for species legal representation. According to Section 8445, any species facing resource extraction has the right to appoint legal counsel recognized by the Galactic Bar Association. Slight problem, Eliza pointed out. We don't have any lawyers recognized by the Galactic Bar Association. Actually, Theo countered. Section 8446 states that in the absence of qualified counsel, a species may petition for provisional recognition of its own legal experts, provided they can demonstrate basic comprehension of galactic jurisprudential principles. Jack turned from the window, a slow smile spreading across his face. And we just demonstrated that by citing the Dispute Resolution Clause, didn't we? Precisely, Theo nodded. By invoking Appendix R7, we've already proven basic comprehension. The president looked between them. So what does this mean in practical terms? It means, Jack said, that we can demand official standing in their legal system. We can force them to treat us not as some primitive species to be harvested, but as a legitimate party with legal rights. And once we have standing, Eliza added, catching on, we can access their full legal database, file motions, request discovery. We can gum up their works with so much legal procedure they'll wish they never saw our little blue planet, Jack concluded. The president looked skeptical. You really think we can out bureaucracy and advanced alien civilization? Madam President, Jack replied with absolute confidence. Bureaucracy is the one technology humans have perfected beyond all others. We've been obstructing progress through paperwork since the first cave person invented the concept of waiting in line. A young aide burst into the room before the president could respond. They're back. The aliens are requesting another meeting. They say they've consulted with their superiors and are prepared to address our dispute claim. The president straightened her jacket. How do we play this? Jack exchanged glances with his team. Confident but not cocky. We need to establish our legal standing first, then demand the Sentient Rights Accord and any other reference documents. And most importantly, we need to get them to agree to postpone extraction until the dispute is resolved. And if they refuse, the president asked. They won't, Jack said with more certainty than he felt. They're bureaucrats at heart. They've built their entire empire on rules and procedures. If they violate their own protocols, it creates a precedent that could undermine their authority throughout their confederation. The team gathered their key documents and followed the president to the East Wing conference room. As they walked, Dev fell into step beside Jack. "You realize," Dev whispered, "that we're essentially bluffing with a pair of twos, right? We've found some procedural technicalities, but we don't know if there's actually anything in these treaties that can save Earth." Jack nodded slightly. "Welcome to high-stakes litigation, Professor. Half of winning is making the other side believe you've got a royal flush when you're holding garbage." They entered the conference room to find Administrator Zylock already seated, along with a new alien they hadn't seen before. This one was smaller, with an exoskeleton that shimmered with iridescent colors and what appeared to be ceremonial markings on its carapace. President Harrison Zylock's mechanical voice acknowledged, "I present legal adjunct Vexora of the Resource Acquisition Bureau's Compliance Division." The smaller alien's translator crackled to life. "Greetings, Earth representatives. I have reviewed your invocation of the Dispute Resolution Protocol and find it technically valid, though highly irregular." Jack stepped forward. "Thank you for acknowledging our claim, Adjunct Vexora. We'd like to proceed by establishing our standing as legal representatives of Earth under Section 8446 of the treaty." Both aliens froze momentarily, their compound eyes swiveling to focus on Jack. "You have reviewed Section 8446, Vexora asked slowly. "Along with Sections 5938, 7212, 8445, and the entirety of Appendix R7, yes," Jack replied smoothly. "We may be a Class 2 civilization by your metrics, but we can read quite well." Vexora's mandibles clicked rapidly. "This is unprecedented. No species at your development level has ever requested legal standing. Yet the treaty clearly provides for it," Jack pointed out. "Unless the Galactic Confederation makes a habit of including provisions in its legal codes that it has no intention of honoring." A tense silence followed. Jack could almost hear the alien equivalent of mental gears turning. "Very well," Vexora finally said. "Provisional recognition is granted, pending formal review by the Galactic Bar Association. You may present your dispute claim." Jack glanced at Theo, who handed him a carefully prepared document. "Excellent. Our first official action is to request all treaties, accords, and regulations referenced in the Resource Acquisition Treaty, particularly the Galactic Sentient Rights Accord mentioned in Section 7212. Zylock made a sound that Jack interpreted as alien sputtering. "This is absurd. The Sentient Rights Accord is thousands of pages long and pertains to Class 3 civilizations and above. Yet incorporated by reference in Section 12 of your treaty with us," Eliza interjected smoothly, "making it binding on all parties, regardless of classification." Vexora turned to Zylock, and the two aliens engaged in a rapid exchange of clicks and whistles that the translators didn't catch. Finally, Vexora turned back to the humans. "Your request will be granted. The reference documents will be provided. However, this does not change the fundamental validity of our claim to Earth's resources." "Of course not," Jack agreed pleasantly. "We're simply ensuring due process. And speaking of process, we also formally request that all extraction activities be postponed until our dispute is resolved through proper channels, as required by Appendix R7, subsection Theta, paragraph 9. Another tense silence filled the room. "That would cause significant logistical disruptions," Zylock protested. "Our extraction fleet is already positioned. Our resource quotas are scheduled." Administrator Vexora interrupted. "They are within their rights under the protocol." The legal adjunct turned to Jack. "Your request for postponement is granted, pending appointment of a neutral arbitrator from the Galactic Judiciary Commission." Jack maintained his poker face, but beneath the table, Eliza discreetly squeezed his arm in silent celebration. "Thank you, Adjunct Vexora," Jack said formally. "We look forward to receiving the reference documents and beginning the arbitration process." The meeting concluded shortly after, with arrangements made for the transfer of the additional treaties and the initiation of the arbitrator selection process. As soon as the aliens departed, the president turned to Jack's team with undisguised amazement. "You actually did it. You bought us time." "We did more than that," Jack said, allowing himself a small smile. "We just entered the galactic legal system as recognized participants. Now the real work begins." Back in their makeshift war room, The team gathered around as Theo accessed the newly provided documents on a secure tablet. The Galactic Sentient Rights Accord, he announced, flipping through the alien text as it translated to English. Over 12,000 pages of pure, bureaucratic gold. "Find me something we can use," Jack said. "Something big." For the next hour they divided the document, each taking sections based on their expertise. The room fell silent except for the occasional rustle of digital pages and muttered comments. Jack was deep in a section about resource rights when Theo suddenly slammed his hand on the table. Holy. Actual. Everyone looked up. "What?" Jack asked. "What did you find?" Theo's eyes were wide behind his glasses, a manic grin spreading across his face. Article 17, Section 943 of the Sentient Rights Accord: any species, regardless of development classification, may claim protected status under the Confederation Conservation Directive if they can demonstrate unique cultural, biological, or ecological characteristics worthy of preservation. And Eliza prompted. And Theo continued, barely containing his excitement. Protected status entities cannot be subject to resource extraction without explicit consent freely given and fair compensation mutually agreed upon. Jack leaned back, processing the implications. So if we can prove humans are unique enough to qualify for protected status, they can't take our resources without our consent, Dev finished. And they certainly don't have that. There's more, Theo said. The burden of proof for denying protected status is on the challenging party, in this case, the Resource Acquisition Bureau. They would have to prove we're not unique or worthy of preservation. The president, who had been silently observing, stepped forward. Can they do that? Prove we're not unique? Jack looked at his team, then back at the president with the first genuine smile since the aliens arrived. Madam President, I think it's time we educated these aliens about just how special and weird humanity really is. They want our resources. First, they'll have to sit through the galaxy's most absurd PowerPoint presentation about human culture. Eliza raised an eyebrow. PowerPoint? Really, Jack? Trust me, Jack replied. If anything in the universe can defeat an advanced alien civilization, it's death by PowerPoint. The team worked through the night, fueled by coffee, adrenaline, and the looming threat of planetary destruction. They pored over the Galactic Sentient Rights Accord, highlighting provisions, cross-referencing clauses, and building what Jack called their humanity's greatest hits presentation. We need to be strategic about this, Jack said, pacing the conference room at 3 a.m. If we claim protected status, they'll fight it. We need leverage. Eliza looked up from her tablet. What about a counterproposal instead? Something that gives them some of what they want, but protects Earth's core resources. A settlement offer, Dev considered. It could work. Shows we're reasonable. Theo, who hadn't slept in 36 hours but showed no signs of fatigue, spun in his chair. Section 4219 allows for negotiated resource sharing agreements as alternatives to full extraction. That's it, Jack snapped his fingers. We don't fight them on whether they can take resources. We negotiate which resources and how much. By morning, they had drafted a counterproposal. Earth would voluntarily provide certain renewable resources in exchange for technology transfers and protection under the Confederation. The key point: no extraction of core planetary resources like oceans or atmosphere. It's brilliant, the president said after reviewing their proposal. But will they accept it? Probably not initially, Jack admitted. But it gives us a stronger position when we eventually claim protected status. We tried to be reasonable, they refused. Internal divisions emerged as they refined the strategy. Dev worried they were conceding too much. Eliza thought the technology demands were too aggressive. Jack and Theo disagreed on which human cultural oddities would best demonstrate our uniqueness. Jazz, Theo insisted. Jazz is mathematically complex yet emotionally intuitive. No other species could create it. Puns, Jack countered. Nothing says these weirdos deserve protection like our ability to find humor in linguistic ambiguity. Their debate was interrupted when Vexora requested another meeting. As they gathered their materials, Jack pulled the team aside. Remember, this is just round one. They'll reject this offer. Act disappointed but not surprised. The aliens were waiting in the conference room, Psylocke vibrating with barely contained impatience. "We understand you wish to present an alternative proposal," Vexora stated. "The Resource Acquisition Bureau will hear it, though I must stress that standard extraction procedures rarely deviate." Jack stepped forward, tablet in hand. "Before we present our proposal, we'd like to formally notify you of our intent to claim protected status under Article 17 of the Sentient Rights Accord if negotiations fail." Psylocke's mandibles clacked loudly. "Preposterous. Your species barely qualifies as sentient." "We can debate sentience metrics later," Jack replied smoothly. "For now, here's our counter-proposal." As Jack outlined their offer, Psylocke's agitation grew visibly. When he finished, the administrator shot up from his seat. "Completely unacceptable. Your planet has been selected, categorized, and scheduled. This counter-proposal is rejected." Jack exchanged glances with his team. "Phase 1 complete. Now for Phase 2. "In that case," he said calmly, "we formally claim protected status and request an immediate hearing before the Galactic Judiciary Commission." The game was on. 3 weeks later, Jack stood before the Galactic Judiciary Commission, a semicircular chamber that resembled the unholy offspring of the United Nations, a corporate boardroom, and an insect hive. 7 different alien species sat in elevated positions, their various appendages manipulating holographic interfaces. Earth's legal team occupied one side of the chamber floor, while Psylocke, Vexora, and 3 other aliens from the Resource Acquisition Bureau sat opposite. "These proceedings will now commence," announced the chief adjudicator, a floating gelatinous cube with tentacles that seemed to phase in and out of visibility. "Earth has claimed protected status under Article 17 of the Sentient Rights Accord. The Resource Acquisition Bureau disputes this claim. Each party will present their case." Vexora rose, or rather, extended upward, since her species lacked legs as humans understood them. "Honored adjudicators, Earth is a Class 2 civilization on a resource-rich planet. Their claim for protected status is nothing but a delay tactic. They exhibit no unique characteristics warranting special consideration." Jack straightened his tie and stood. In the weeks since claiming protected status, Earth's team had been granted access to the Galactic Legal Database, a treasure trove of precedents, procedures, and loopholes. They'd prepared meticulously. "Esteemed adjudicators," Jack began, "3 weeks ago, representatives of the Galactic Confederation arrived at our planet, demanded our resources, and gave us 72 hours before beginning extraction. Today, I stand before you because my supposedly primitive species managed to read, comprehend, and utilize the legal framework that governs your confederation." He paused, letting that sink in. "Now ask yourselves, if we're so unremarkable, how are we here? How did we master your legal code quickly enough to claim protected status? That alone demonstrates humanity's unique adaptability and intellectual capacity." One of the adjudicators, a crystalline entity that refracted light in mesmerizing patterns, chimed in. "An interesting opening argument. Please proceed with your evidence of uniqueness." Jack nodded to Theo, who activated their presentation. "Humanity exhibits unique characteristics in 3 key areas: cultural diversity, biological adaptability, and ecological stewardship." What followed was the most bizarre showcase of humanity ever assembled. Theo presented jazz, explaining its mathematical complexities and improvisational nature. Eliza demonstrated human linguistic diversity, revealing that Earth had over 7,000 languages. Dev explained how humans had adapted to survive in environments from Arctic tundra to scorching deserts. The adjudicators watched with increasing interest as Jack described human art forms, from ballet to heavy metal, poetry to abstract expressionism. He showcased human ingenuity through inventions from the wheel to quantum computing. "But perhaps most unique," Jack continued, "is our capacity for self-reflection and moral evolution. Despite our violence and flaws, humans continually strive to become better." Psylocke interrupted, mandibles clicking furiously. "This sentimental display is irrelevant. All species have cultural oddities." "If I may," Jack countered, activating a holographic display. "This is your own precedent case, the Florian Protectorate VV, Resource Acquisition Bureau. The Florians received protected status because they communicate through pheromonal poetry. We've demonstrated far more unique characteristics than the Florians ever did." The chief adjudicator's gelatinous form rippled. The human makes a valid point. Furthermore, Jack continued, according to Article 17, Section 946, the burden of proof lies with the challenging party. The Resource Acquisition Bureau must prove we are not unique, not the other way around. Vexora stood. We can easily demonstrate that other species share these characteristics. By all means, Jack replied with a smile. Please show us another species that created the Mona Lisa, composed Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, invented jazz, wrote Don Quixote, and developed 7,000 distinct languages, all while evolving from cave-dwelling primates to space exploration in less than 10,000 years. The chamber fell silent. Xylok conferred frantically with his team, then stood. We propose an alternative solution. The Resource Acquisition Bureau will accept a modified version of Earth's original counter-proposal. The chief adjudicator's tentacles waved dismissively. That is between your Bureau and Earth. This commission must rule on protected status. After a brief recess, the commission returned. The chief adjudicator's translucent form pulsed with light as it spoke. Having reviewed the evidence, the Galactic Judiciary Commission grants Earth protected status under Article 17 of the Sentient Rights Accord. Resource extraction may only proceed with explicit consent and fair compensation. Jack and his team maintained their composure until they reached their private chamber, then erupted in celebration. "We did it," Eliza exclaimed, actually hugging Jack, who looked as surprised as she did. "Technically, we just prevented them from taking our resources without permission," Dev cautioned. "They could still make life difficult for Earth." "True," Jack conceded. "But now we negotiate from strength, not desperation." A communication chime interrupted them. On the screen appeared Vexora. "The Resource Acquisition Bureau requests a meeting to discuss a revised resource-sharing agreement," she announced, her mechanical voice unable to hide a note of defeat. Jack smiled. "We'd be delighted. Our counter-proposal is ready when you are." As Vexora's image disappeared, Theo grinned. "Should we tell them we added 17 new provisions while they were busy trying to deny our protected status?" "All in good time," Jack replied. "All in good time." 6 months after the aliens first appeared in Earth's skies, Jack Reynolds stood at the window of his Manhattan office, watching a very different kind of alien vessel dock at the newly constructed Galactic Embassy Tower across the street. Unlike the ominous warships of the Resource Acquisition Bureau, this sleek diplomatic craft resembled a cross between a dragonfly and a luxury yacht. "Still can't believe we pulled it off," said Eliza, who had taken to dropping by Jack's office unannounced. After saving the world together, traditional office protocols seemed rather pointless. "We didn't just pull it off," Jack replied, turning from the window. "We rewrote the rules of the game." The final settlement with the Galactic Confederation had exceeded all expectations. Earth would provide limited renewable resources, primarily unique biological compounds found nowhere else in the galaxy, in exchange for clean energy technology, medical advancements, and official recognition as a protected developing civilization with full membership rights in the Confederation. "Have you seen the latest numbers?" Eliza asked, tossing a tablet onto Jack's desk. "Galactic tourism to Earth is up 300% this quarter. Turns out we're the hottest vacation destination in 3 spiral arms." Jack glanced at the tablet and chuckled. Who would have thought aliens would pay ridiculous amounts of whatever they use for money just to experience jazz clubs, try our food, and take selfies at the Grand Canyon? "The Crystalline delegation has booked the entire Metropolitan Opera House for next season," Eliza added. "They're apparently obsessed with human opera. Something about the frequencies resonating with their molecular structure." Jack's intercom buzzed. "Mr. Reynolds, Dev Patel, and Theo Goldman are here. Send them in." Dev entered wearing an impeccably tailored suit that was a far cry from the rumpled academic attire he'd worn when they first met. As the newly appointed Earth ambassador to the Galactic Confederation, he'd developed a sense of style befitting his position. Theo followed, still looking disheveled despite his new title as Earth's Chief Knowledge Officer for Interstellar Affairs. His glasses remained perpetually askew, but now they incorporated alien tech that allowed him to read and process information in 17 different languages simultaneously. "Just got back from the Confederation capital," Dev announced, helping himself to Jack's expensive bourbon without asking. Some things never changed. The Judiciary Commission has officially recognized Earth's legal system as a unique cultural institution worthy of study. They're sending scholars to learn about our fascinating adversarial approach to justice. And they want to incorporate some of our contract law principles into Confederation statutes, Theo added, practically bouncing with excitement. Apparently, our concept of good faith negotiation is revolutionary to them. Jack laughed. So we've gone from almost having our planet stripped for parts to becoming the galaxy's legal consultants. Not bad for 6 months' work. Speaking of work, Eliza said, how's business been since you saved the world? Jack gestured at his office, which had doubled in size and now occupied the entire top floor of the building. Reynolds Legal Associates has become Reynolds, Morales Patel Goldman Interstellar Law. We've got a 6-month waiting list of alien civilizations wanting representation in Confederation disputes. And you're charging them how much, Dev asked with a knowing smile. If they can afford faster than light travel, they can afford our billable hours, Jack replied without a hint of shame. Besides, we're still representing Earth pro bono in all negotiations. They moved to the conference room, where a holographic display showed the current status of Earth's integration into the galactic community. Trade routes glowed in blue, diplomatic connections in green, and cultural exchanges in gold. The display looked like a sparkling web connecting Earth to hundreds of worlds. Administrator Zylock was reassigned, Theo reported, scrolling through his data feed. Apparently, losing Earth's resources and instead turning us into a protected status civilization with full membership rights was considered a significant career failure. And Vexora, Jack asked. Promoted, Eliza answered. The Confederation was impressed with how she handled the settlement negotiations after we won protected status. She's now senior adjunct for diplomatic solutions. Good for her, Jack said sincerely. She was the only one who actually followed their own rules. Speaking of which, has anyone heard about? He was interrupted by his assistant. Mr. Reynolds, the President is on line 1. Jack picked up. Madam President, what can I do for you? Jack, I need you and your team at the White House immediately. The Arcturian Commonwealth has approached us about exclusive rights to broadcast human entertainment content in their sector. Apparently, our reality television is considered high art there. We need a licensing agreement drafted. We're on our way, Jack replied, hanging up. Duty calls. The Arcturians want our reality TV shows. Dev looked horrified. They think The Real Housewives is high art. Just wait until they discover soap operas, Theo added. As they gathered their things, Jack paused at the door. You know, sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't picked up Miguel's call that day. The aliens would have taken our oceans, and we'd all be fighting over the last puddles of water, Eliza said matter-of-factly. Instead, we're teaching advanced alien civilizations about contract law and licensing, keeping up with the Kardashians to beings with tentacles, Jack mused. The universe is stranger than any of us imagined. And apparently humans are the strangest thing in it, Dev added. To humanity, Jack said, raising an imaginary glass. Too weird to extract, too interesting to ignore, and just clever enough to turn an alien invasion into the galaxy's best business opportunity. To humanity, they echoed. As they left the office, a massive alien ship passed overhead, its hull emblazoned with the logo of the Galactic Tourism Board and a new slogan, Earth, the universe's most improbable success story. Jack smiled to himself. In the end, it wasn't Earth's military might that had saved the planet, it was human creativity, adaptability, and an uncanny talent for finding loopholes in fine print. The aliens had come for our resources but found something far more valuable: humanity itself, in all its bizarre, contradictory, endlessly fascinating glory. And they'd paid top dollar for it. Just another victory for Earth's most unexpected heroes, its lawyers.